What's going on, Guns N' Roses fans? So apparently Tommy Stinson's out doing interviews for I think his new Bash and Pop album that's out, and he has an interview here with Music Aficionado, which I've put below in the description box if you guys care to read about it. So he talked about his time with Guns N' Roses. There was actually quite a few questions about Guns N' Roses. So one of the first questions is, what did you take away from your time with Guns N' Roses? He said one of the first things I got out of it was a collaborating aspect of it, working with 5 or 6 people called to the task of writing together. He said it was an easy task, but it was interesting because it was something I'd never done before. It was also just a good gig for me all these years. It was a good run. It served me well, and I think it served them well for the most part. And now they're off doing their thing. I'm happy for all of them. They're all still friends of mine. I think Tommy seems like a stand-up guy. I told you guys my story of when I actually saw him in person. So he also was asked about, do you think that version of Guns got a fair shake from the fans? He still he was pretty I thought I was surprised by his answer. He said yeah, he does think it got a fair shake. He said most of the people just came out to see Axl because he's the man who was the front guy for the whole thing. He said he still gets fans Facebooking him saying, oh man, we really love you in the band, thanks for keeping it going all these years. He also talked about how he actually landed the gig, and what was interesting is, I guess just before he got the gig, he was actually in telemarketing before that. So I read before the Replacements, even though they were a popular punk rock band, they didn't make a ton of money, because I guess they were more of an underground band. But he said he was with a band called Perfect, and he'd just been signed to Restless Records, which was owned by Regency Films. And as soon as they started finishing making that record, it seemed like it was all doomed from the get-go because the record company had made some bad maneuvers. At that point, he said he was sort of exasperated by the whole thing being off his back. He was actually friends with the original drummer Josh Freese, who was, I think, one of the first people to start working on Chinese Democracy. And he said he talked to his friend Josh, and he said, why don't you just come and play with Guns and come check it out? It's kind of a cool gig. And so he went and did it, and Axl saw him, and they talked for a bit, and it was a pretty easy fit, and it happened pretty quickly. And he also talked about being a musical director for Guns. He said he was trying to be the peacekeeper and the team leader for a long time, but then it got a little too much for him. And he talked a little bit more about working with Axl. The questioner asked, Axl's got a reputation of being hard to work with and unreliable. Is that undeserved? And he said, he's not really a bad person, Axl. He's not an asshole. He's actually a pal of Tommy's. He said they had a good working relationship, but it wasn't always easy. But he said neither is a marriage or any other relationship you have that's long lasting. He said there are things going on, bumps and all that, but for the most part, he was great to me. All the stories you heard are completely blown out of proportion as far as I'm concerned. His reputation was a little more mythological than actual reality. He also was asked about how frustrating it was to actually spend so much time working on Chinese Democracy. He said after a while it got to be a little arduous, with so many record company people coming and going. It's kind of made it hard to focus on finishing the whole CD. And he said Jimmy Iovine would throw people at us. It got to be kind of screwy. He said, to my mind, that record company part of it was the reason it took so long. We didn't get the help we needed from the top. He was also, he also talked about how his GNR gig basically ended in good time, considering, he had Duff McKagan coming back to the band and having him fill in for some dates back in 2014. So if you guys want to read the entire interview, go check it out. He also talked about seeing the reunited version of Guns N' Roses. And then he talked about, going back to the Replacements. And he also was asked about who's more misunderstood, Axl Rose or Paul Westerberg. So there's a lot of different, things in this article. Interestingly enough, he was actually asked about Axl singing with AC/DC. And he said he thought it was great. He said he was touring up in Canada with Bash and Pop. And he saw the first show in Lisbon on the internet. And he said he was blown away by Axl's performance. And so, yeah, let me know your thoughts. I really like Tommy. He seems like a really cool guy, and it looks like he ended things maybe on a good note with Guns N' Roses. So maybe they'll bring him up on stage one of these times and play with him. But that does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe for the latest GNR news.